So last week, we talked a bit about when faith asks us to do something that we feel like we know we ought to do, but we just can't quite do it. The doing of the thing is what helps increase our faith. And not belief necessarily, but faith being a verb, if you will, a way of being, a courageous stepping into the unknown, of taking risks to see where the love of God leads us. So, with that in mind, this week I want to look at what's going on in the combination of this story of Elisha healing Naaman and Jesus healing the 10 lepers. Okay, so after Solomon dies, the kingdom, which was the 12 tribes of Israel, splits in half, and 10 tribes go north and 2 tribes go south. North is the kingdom of Israel, south is the kingdom of Judah. So what happens is Israel gets taken over by Babylon almost 100 years before Judah gets taken over by Babylon. So you've got Mount Gerizim in Samaria, which is the capital of Israel, and Jerusalem, or Mount Zion, is the capital of Judah. So you probably can sense where I'm going with this if you know a little bit about the fight between Samaria and Jerusalem. So at this point, the kingdoms are split, but there's not the same kind of animosity that comes when Jesus comes along. So right now, Elisha, who is Elijah's protege, is living in Israel. And so the king of Aram sends his general to go be healed of leprosy because the slave girl that they took from Israel to serve the general's wife said, "There's a healer in Israel, go to him and you'll be clean." Long story short, Naaman goes, and Elijah just hangs out in his house and sends Gehazi, his servant, out, like, "I'm not even going to talk to this guy. Here's what you got to do. Go wash yourself 7 times and you're clean." Now, if you're a dignitary, if you're a general, if you're the president of the United States in our time and place, and you go to a doctor, they don't even see you and they just send their aide out to you to tell you a really quick thing, are you going to be a little insulted? Imagine what Teddy Roosevelt would have said to this guy. Teddy Roosevelt was known for not taking no for an answer. He's like, "No, what is this word? I do not understand it." And I can kind of sympathize. I mean, Elisha was not known for being the most diplomatic of people. Keep in mind, he was the one when teenagers were heckling him one day, called bears down from the mountaintop to kill the kids. Not my idea of good discipline, but it goes to show you don't mess with the prophets. They weren't warm and cuddly people, but they were holy men in their own right. Again, ancient world versus now, I would not be okay with anyone calling themselves a prophet and killing teenagers heckling because teenagers are teenagers. I know, I was one. But beside the point, Elisha says, "This is all you got to do. Just go wash yourself in the Jordan River." Now, who here has been to Jerusalem? Has anyone here been? No? Okay. Oh, Therese. Therese, is the Jordan River a very clean, clear, crystal river?
No.
No, it's kind of muddy, isn't it?
It's muddy and it's narrow and it's cold and dark and not great swimming.
Gotcha. So it's almost like saying, "Hey, it's 1894. Go wash in the Thames 7 times and you'll be clean." And if you know any of the history of the sewer problems that London had, you know that's not an appealing thing. So anyway, needless to say, Naaman is incredulous, but it's sort of like, okay, hang on. If he told you to do something difficult, would you do it? Because what warrior would rise to the task of, "You must climb this mountain 7 times and you will be clean"? I can do it. I don't care if I'm sick. That sort of thing. But he has to humble himself and trust, and faith, and be obedient to what he's been told to do. So again, the thing he has to do in order to be healed is to risk the humiliation, risk stepping into this muddy, weird, gross, narrow river, And there, that is where his healing will come from. And lo and behold, on the seventh time he comes up, ta-da! He has the skin of a young boy, so very, very clean, very pristine, very healthy person. So, he has to be humbled a little bit. He has to do the thing that seems ridiculous, but is the thing that works. And he recognizes the God of Israel and the healing power that God has. So he's transformed as well as healed. Okay, so we're going to do a real quick line through history to get to where Jesus is. Okay, so Babylon takes over. Everyone goes off in exile in Israel. 100 years later, same thing in Judah. They all go off. Then they get sent back. Now there's a few people that stay in Samaria, and they're the small remnant. So they end up marrying other cultures and other people from other nations, so other religions as well. So not the most pure and pristine of religious and cultural intersections. Something that we wouldn't care so much about now, but was a big deal back then for a small country. Ezra and Nehemiah come back because Cyrus of Persia has sent them back to rebuild the temple, but they try to purify not only the temple, but also the people. So they're like, yeah, you Samaritans are kind of half-bloods. You don't really fit. And so that brings a much deeper animosity between the two. And the fight between Mount Gerizim in Samaria and Mount Zion in Judah becomes much more of an issue. To the point where right before the time of Jesus, there are Samaritans who put bones of dead people in the temple right before Passover. Not kosher. Not okay. It ruined the ceremony. And then they were known to kill pilgrims on the border of Samaria. And when the leader didn't intervene, Jews from a nearby village attacked the Samaritans across that border. So, one big happy family, right? Okay, I promise you this all makes sense. So, you're looking at really, really, really tense situation. This is why Jews and Samaritans were like oil and water the whole time. Now, lepers are supposed to stay away from everyone and yell, unclean, unclean. Not because they're condemned by God, but hey, let's face it. We've been living in a pandemic for 2 years. We know what it's like to be like, hey, you have COVID? Why don't you stay way over there? It's not because we don't love you, but we want you to be healed and we don't want to get it. But they come to Jesus and ask to be healed. Well, what does he say? Go to the priests and show yourselves. Now, who here thinks that's kind of a weird thing to do? If you don't know, if you haven't slogged through Leviticus. Yeah, it's okay to raise your hand. I didn't either. This is what I discovered because of the commentary that I looked at, that I would not have ever known if I hadn't done that. Basically, in Leviticus, the priests were effectively the physicians of their time. So if you had leprosy, you would go to the priest, show what's going on for you, and they would diagnose you and then give you things to do. So what Jesus was saying here is, go to the doctor. Now, normally we think it's like he's saying, you're healed, go to the priest to show that you're clean, which is part of what you also do as well. But what if he was saying, you come to me, but all you have to do is go to the priest and they can help you out. That is what Torah commands. But he gives them a directive in the same way that Elisha gives Naaman a directive that seems odd. Go and show yourselves to the priests. Get your diagnosis. Now, what they did was faith into that choice, that directive. They did what they were told. They obeyed this directive for their healing. And what happens? They were healed on the way. Now, whether Jesus had already healed them, or whether that decision to do that was what made it there, which I think it's the latter, because Jesus says later on, your faith has made you well. Not your belief, your faithing, your action, your way of being in the world. You're choosing to step into this risk that brings us into a family. Now, I am not talking about the kind of faith healing and prosperity gospel stuff that floats around in a lot of Christianity today. I am saying figuring out what it is that God is asking of us that brings healing. But not only bringing healing into our lives, but look what happens. Who's the one person who comes back to Jesus to thank him for healing him? A Samaritan. Kind of the outsider. Kind of the person that Jews tend to really not trust. Faith in that situation not only brought healing, but it brought transformation, and it also transcends the divisions that we have set up or that we have had to uphold to protect ourselves. Well, that's a bit squirmy. The kingdom of heaven is healing, transforming, and uniting. It isn't really about just, are you of one group of people or another? Are you of the right religion or the wrong religion? The right worship space or the wrong worship space? The right political party or the wrong political party? It's about allowing yourself to trust that the path of love, when we follow it, brings the healing we've been seeking. It brings transformation in our lives because we begin to see that as we trust that thing, because there is no guarantee with faith that you're going to get what you're seeking. That's the whole point. It's not belief, it's doubt that begins faith. But as we step into that, and you don't want to put faith in things that don't make sense, which is why it's hard. But that invitation by God to say, hey, here's how you find your way to this thing. Giving that a try, even if it's just a little step, like a little thing, like going and washing in the river 7 times. Go show yourself to the priest. Go do the thing that you know you need to do by Torah. Or those little things that God might be nudging us to do in our lives as individuals and as a parish community that could bring about that healing and transformation and overcoming of divisions in our world requires that willingness to step into those places that we have no guarantee of what's coming. It requires us to be courageous, but it also brings those things that we so desperately desire to see in the world, and that we trust God to be able to bring about for us. So, where are areas where you're wanting healing from God? That God is asking you to do something that might not be what you think you need to do, but might just be that one thing. Maybe you don't have this. It's okay if you don't. But where are the areas in our lives where we're being asked to step in a different direction than we might have expected so that the love of God can bring about that healing, transformation, and uniting across divisions? So that the kingdom of God, which is built on love of God, neighbor, and self, can bring a new world, can be the leaven in the yeast, or the leaven in the bread that rises it up out of everything. So may we look into our lives and see where we're being directed to faith our way into where love can be brought about in the world. Amen.